But what about something more complex? What about, say, a logic error where your code is working fine except for the fact that there's some issue with your logic that's not causing it the way you have it to behave the way you want it to? Well, we've actually got one of these on this form too. You see, with the contact information we've got for our contact here, we've got some basic information. But since this contact's a web guru, we should really have a place to store their Twitter profile, their YouTube channel, all that Web 2.0 social stuff. And there's actually supposed to be a section that shows up for this contact type, but for some reason, it's not. So we've got a logic error in here where, based upon the contact type, there should be another section here, and there isn't. So how can we look at that using the developer tools? Well, what we can do is we can go in and pull up our code by searching through this whole drop down here until we find our JavaScript file, so webinar external JavaScript. And we can go into the part of the function that's supposed to handle hiding or showing that contact type and see what's going on. So we've got it set up to say if crmform.all.new contact type data value equals 4, does not equal 4, then we're supposed to hide the web section. So what we're saying is, we think here that the web guru is contact type 4, and therefore it should be showing the section. So let's just take a quick look, and it is the fourth one down, so it would make sense that it's 4, but maybe there's something else we're missing that's going on here. So what we can do to test that out is we can set a breakpoint right here. It'll stop the code right there, and then we can refresh. You can see the developer tools will stop the code right at, if we give it a moment to load, right at that line where we were looking, and we can start to try to explore what's going on here. So, this first section here, this console section, that's what we saw when the error message came up on its own, when there was some, a typo in our code. And that's how the developer tools works, is it'll bring up any obvious errors in this console section. But if we want to explore the logic errors, we got to use some of these other sections over here. So breakpoints is pretty self-explanatory. It tells us what all our breakpoints are, and it'll let us jump right to them. Locals will be if you have any local variables defined in the form, it'll list them all out and their values at the point here. And most importantly, then there's watch, where you can essentially ask the IE developer tools to evaluate any statement. So you can basically type in anything in here, and it'll tell you what the value or the result of it is at this point in the program. So in our case, we're interested in whether or not crmform.all.new contact type data value is really 4. So what happens if we stick it in here? We see, we accidentally had a extra parentheses there. Okay, we see here that the crmform.all.new is actually 1. So for whatever reason, the drop-down pick list options are not sorted in the same order that their labels actually correspond to. So now we know what the problem is. We can go in and change that pretty quick. And this watch function, you can actually do quite a bit with it. So you don't just, you can explore pretty much anything. So if, for example, we just put crmform.all.new.contact type, we would know that we could actually, we could explore the whole object and see all the different methods, see everything, scroll down to the data value section and see all the information on that, so that you can really evaluate almost anything. You can type in a function here, and it'll evaluate the result of that function. You can really explore the internals of your CRM form, and explore basically all elements of it. So that pretty much covers our debugging scenarios. We'll go in here and change the code real quick. So if we look over here, we have data value 1. We save it. And then if we copy over the new version, we can go back into our form, let it finish uploading, and then reload it once more. And we forgot to get rid of the breakpoint, so it's going to stop it again. But we'll go on past that breakpoint, and you'll see this time it works fine. We load up the web and social media information. So that pretty much covers debugging. So this is kind of the more boring stuff. So we're going to move on to something that's a little more exciting, which is using jQuery in CRM. And just to give some explanation about what jQuery is basically an external JavaScript library. It's open source, and it was developed to make web development and JavaScript development much more streamlined and much more effective. The best way to think of jQuery is that it is a lean, mean document object model manipulation machine. It's kind of like regular expressions for the HTML DOM. You can write very, very, very concise, compact code to search for all of the document object elements meeting some sort of criteria and then manipulate them all very quickly. And what we'll do is walk through a couple of examples to really show you what that means and show you how to use it. So the first application for jQuery is how we're doing this little thing over here on the left-hand nav, where we have a picture embedded into the new left-hand navigation group. And you can see that this picture behaves just like the normal left-hand navigation groups. You can hide it, show it. It's got its own label, and it's pulling this dynamically using our details tab over here, where we define the relative folder path to the photo from the ISV folder. So we're actually doing this entirely through jQuery, and we're doing this in one line of code. And I'll show you how that works. So we have down here the section for defining photos. And all we do is we set up two variables to define where our images are, and then use this one line of jQuery here to actually insert that image directly into the left-hand nav. Now, like I said, jQuery is kind of like regular expressions for the document object model. So we basically, what it means is that sorry, I just got distracted for a second. What it means is that we use what looks a little bit like gobbledygook to do the first part, to do the searching part. So, if you've worked with regular expressions, you know that you see them, you read them, and if you don't know what you're looking at, it looks like it might as well be hieroglyphics. jQuery is a little bit like that, but if you break down the code into its component sections, it actually makes a lot of sense. So the first thing you see in jQuery is what is called a selector, and it does exactly what it sounds like. It's responsible for letting you select from the HTML document object model all of the elements that meet a certain criteria. And so you use a sort of a shorthand to handle that selection. So what this actually translates to, what this selector starting here is, give me all of the elements in the document object model whose class is MSCRM NetLab bar. So basically, when you write the selector, the period tells jQuery that you're looking for a class, and then you type the name of that class right afterwards. So it's going to select everything that has the left nav bar, and then it's going to perform this jQuery action, pre-pinned, and it'll basically put right at the put as the first child of the left nav bar element this new and we basically put the HTML that defines what defines the MSCRM nav group, and it inserts it in right there so that we have, as you see, this picture as the first thing in our left-hand nav bar. So, now this isn't necessarily related to jQuery, but we can also walk through very quickly the actual HTML that we're using to define the left nav group. And this is another way that you can get a lot of use out of the IE debugger tools. That, the way that we came to this HTML that we're using here is basically we use the IE debugger tools and use the HTML tab to look at how the left nav bar actually behaves. And we can see all the details of it, see how each group actually behaves, and essentially copy and paste the HTML that's already being used there and use it again. And the only thing that we do is, replace the little bit and add in where we want to have our image. So add in a new image to the inside of the the list object that defines the left-hand nav group. So this is how jQuery can really streamline and help this process, is that all you have to do is come up with your selector to find the area where you want to manipulate or change the CRM form, and then use a variety of jQuery commands to actually handle putting that information in there. And so that's a pretty basic example. I'll show you one other basic example that does a slightly different thing and uses a slightly different approach. So we also have on this form here some customizations that will let you actually have a custom help link menu over here. So you can see, let's make this a little smaller. You can see that usually the CRM help menu only has the help on this page, content administrator's guide, etc. But there have been, at least in the past, we've gotten requests from customers to have a link to custom help for their their XRM application over on the menu here. So we can actually do this using jQuery. And what we've got here is we've got the STFW help link. And if we click the STFW help link, it's going to pop up a new window that brings us to Bing so that users can search the freaking web, which is what I know a lot of times you want to tell your users when they're running into issues. But, it's only in the demo that we can do stuff like that. So how do we go about doing this? Well, it's very similar to the picture example. We have here in the code another jQuery selector, and you can see it's slightly different. Instead of a dot here at the front, we've got a hash. And what that's telling the jQuery is that what we want to do is we want to find all the elements that have as their ID the string menu help on. So essentially here, this is the difference between these two examples. So one, we're searching by class. Here we're searching by ID. And then instead of the prepend command, we're using the after command, which inserts a new element with the HTML that we define after the one that jQuery selects. So instead of looking for a parent and then setting up our new element as the first child, we're looking for one of its siblings and setting up the new element to come directly after it. But it's the same basic idea. You set up your selector, you come up with the command that you're going to apply for jQuery, and then you add your new element in using the just by defining its HTML. And again, sort of like with the adding the new left-hand nav group with the picture, we use the same strategy here to figure out what HTML we should use to add a new menu item. We went to the IE8 developer tools, and we looked at how the menu items that come with CRM behaved, and we basically copied that HTML and tweaked it where we wanted the name and the label to be different and all of that. And now the help menu, we have our new custom help menu link. So this basically gives you the first kind of taste of jQuery. It goes way beyond this, though, because you can get very, very complex selectors. So here we've done sort of a basic selector that says, give me all the elements that have a certain class, or give me all the elements that have a certain ID. You can combine selectors together and get sort of interesting things where you can define, and we'll go into a couple of these examples, but you can go into, basically have samples where you have a selector that is, give me all the elements that have this class and whose ID begins with the letter K, or whose disabled attribute is disabled. So find everything of a certain class that has been disabled, or anything like that. So we'll look at a couple examples real quick of those more complex jQuery selectors and functions. And we'll also be looking at a couple examples of things you can do after what you can have as your command. It's not just adding new HTML elements, but you can do things like change the on-click event for all the elements so that when you click on them, you can have it run a custom function. Or you can have it so that you can write your own custom functions and say, for each of these elements, run this function and replace it according to whatever custom code you want to write.